At 6:45 a.m., the sun hadn't yet burned through the haze hanging over FOB Joyce. Dust clung to everything: concrete barriers, Humvee tires, and the sleeves of Staff Sergeant Kira Hansen's OCP uniform. She stepped off the Chinook rotor wash with quiet precision, carrying a rucksack that looked too large for her 5'3" frame. No one offered to help. She didn't expect them to. A junior Navy corpsman unloading crates glanced at her patch. His brows lifted slightly when he saw the black tab stitched above her name, Sniper. Then he looked down at the hard case in her left hand and muttered to no one. Probably just another intel analyst bringing optics for the SEALs. That assumption followed her like a shadow. Her orders were clear. She'd been attached as Overwatch to SEAL Team 8's Neptune element for a targeted raid in the upper valleys of Kunar Province. Her tasking came from JSOC via Army Special Operations Command. The chain of command had looped her under Task Force Viper. But the team she was here to support didn't seem to care about orders from anyone above, 03. The first interaction came at 7:15 a.m. Inside the operations tent. The mission brief was wrapping up when she arrived. Boots cleaned. Hair pulled tight. Rifle case in one hand. Tablet with topographic overlays in the other. Chief Logan barely glanced up. He looked right past her, then back down at the map on the table. A junior LT from Intel tried to introduce her. Army sniper support. Logan grunted, something that sounded like great. Another data pusher. The SEALs around the table chuckled quietly. Kira stood still, said nothing, and waited for the dismissive laughter to pass. She'd seen this movie before. The disbelief, the need to requalify her competence in every unit she rotated through. What they saw was a 27-year-old with a soft voice and a small frame. What they didn't see was 10 years of discipline, hundreds of hours behind a bolt-action rifle, and a kill sheet thicker than the average platoons combined. Her gear was squared away. In her assault pack, she carried 3 10-round magazines loaded with 300 Norma Magnum environmental kits, a range card notebook with hand-drawn grids, and laminated cheat sheets for various engagement distances. Her rifle, a Barrett MRAD with a Nightforce ATACR scope, had been zeroed at 100 meters just before she left Bagram. Later that morning, as they loaded gear into the convoy trucks, she was quietly handed her assignment, OP Echo. A Ridge Overwatch Site 1, 000 meters. From the objective compound, no close coordination, no comms channel invite beyond the default Overwatch.net, no team welcome. Her mission was to observe and report, only engage if American lives were at immediate risk. She didn't argue. She'd learned long ago that reputation wasn't built in briefings, it was earned in fire. By 11:30 a.m., she was high on that ridge, camouflaged against the rock face. Scope zeroed. Bipod sunk into the dirt. Wind was holding steady west to east at 3 knots. Temperature sat at 89 degrees. She checked her dope card, ran her Kestrel for air density, and made a small mark near grid, 42 SV 8345. That's where they'd enter. Her radio crackled once every half hour, mostly sitreps and command chatter. No one asked for her input. She watched as the SEALs moved in, tactically sound, but unaware of the ridgeline eyes above them. From her position, she could see everything: the dry wadi that bottlenecked the approach, the dilapidated Soviet-era BTR hulled out near the north wall, and the stretch of open ground that gave her the cleanest field of fire. She drank water slowly from her camelback, mindful of the heat. A sniper's body betrays them before their rifle does. She slowed her breathing and sank deeper into the scope, like the valley was pulling her in. Her father's voice came back in fragments. Not quotes, memories. The way he talked about silence, about wind, about the moment before a trigger breaks. By 2:30 p.m., she was still watching, still ignored, still invisible to the team she was there to protect. She hadn't spoken more than 12 words since boots on ground, and yet she had mapped every cover point, every likely ambush site, every shot that might need to be taken. They didn't need to believe in her. But when the shooting started, they'd be glad she was there. The operations briefing started at 7:15 a.m. sharp. Inside the climate-controlled TOC, the room was dim, except for the large digital map projected across the wall. Staff Sergeant Kira Hansen stood near the back, just behind a row of folding chairs occupied by SEALs in dark t-shirts and ball caps. She held her tablet low, thumb ready to scroll, waiting for a natural pause to speak. None came. A Navy lieutenant briefed the general mission outline. Infill from COP Reaper. Dismount before the bridge. Movement through grid 42S, V8345 to the compound for SSE. Target building was marked Bravo 3. Time on target was 4:40 a.m. Local. The SEALs leaned forward during the discussion of exfil routes and potential resistance. Kira's section never got called. She shifted her weight slightly, raised her hand, just enough to be seen. The operations captain from Army side nodded toward her. Sergeant Hansen. Go ahead. Her voice was even. She highlighted a natural choke at a dried wadi near Checkpoint Delta. ISR footage from 2 nights ago showed a 2-man patrol in Overwatch position there. Humint from 3 weeks prior suggested the area had been used for ambushes. She outlined how the narrow walls and limited escape angles could trap the team if things went south. A silence stretched for half a beat too long. Chief Logan leaned back in his chair, arms folded, and turned just enough to glance at her, then back to the screen. The LT kept the briefing moving. New questions. A petty officer in the second row leaned toward another and whispered something. Kira didn't catch the words, but she didn't need to. Her assessment stayed up on the map for maybe 10 seconds before it was cleared. The screen returned to the primary assault layout, ignoring the wadi entirely. After the session, she approached the table, quietly offered a printed copy of her threat overlay. Chief Logan barely looked at it. We've run this route twice, he said. If it's hot, we'll adjust. We don't need intel playing warfighter. His voice wasn't sharp. It didn't have to be. The message landed just fine. Major Keller from JSOC gave her a small nod. That was it. No pushback. No backup. Kira folded the paper, placed it back into her binder, and walked out without a word. Her rifle would speak later. For now, she just filed the moment away. Like so many others, the map in her head didn't care who listened. It just waited. At 5:30 p.m., the sun hovered low over the mountain ridgeline, casting long shadows across the valley floor. Kira lay motionless on her belly, her body pressed into the gravel like part of the landscape. She had reached OP Echo 2 hours earlier. After a steep solo climb with 60 pounds of gear and no conversation, that suited her fine. Words had never kept anyone alive. The ridge overlooked Grid 42, SV8345. From this vantage point, she had visibility on the entire compound, plus both ingress and egress trails. The wind was steady out of the west at 4 knots. She checked it with her Kestrel and confirmed it again with a strip of dental floss taped to the barrel shroud. She logged the data, then drew a small triangle on her range card to mark the wadi. She'd already built a mental map of the kill box. Her Barrett MRAD rested quietly on its bipod, barrel snug against a natural depression in the shale. Chambered in. 300 Norma Magnum. It was zeroed for 100 meters. But she'd already adjusted elevation for 940. She ran the bolt once just to feel it cycle. Smooth. Her Nightforce ATACR held clarity even in the evening haze. She dialed in the dope and locked her cheek to the stock. Everything from this point on had to feel automatic. Kira's sniper hide wasn't textbook. It never was in terrain like this. She used a roll of jute netting and some scrub branches to break up the shape of her rifle, then packed loose dirt onto her ruck behind her back to mask her silhouette. She wore no glow patches, no reflective tape, just earth-toned sleeves and patience. By 8:15 p.m., her neck ached and her fingers had started to go numb. She didn't shift. Movement gave away position faster than a muzzle flash. Instead, she rotated her ankles in slow micro-movements to keep circulation flowing. Her body had long ago learned how to exist inside discomfort. She spent the next hour sketching every line of the compound doorways, blind corners, power lines, reflective surface. She marked likely weapon positions, covered approaches, and fallback options. Her notes were organized in a small, waterproof notebook. One she kept in a zippered pouch on her chest rig. Not for someone else, for herself. At 11:40 p.m., she took 3 sips of warm water and a bite of a protein bar softened from heat. She didn't unwrap it all the way. Waste attracted ants. And scent traveled. She spit the wrapper back into a Ziploc and resealed it without sound. The SEAL team wouldn't move until well after midnight. But she remained locked in. No music. No radio chatter. No comfort. Just a long rifle. A wide valley. And 12 hours of silence that might turn deadly with a single movement. She blinked twice. Adjusted focus. And waited. At 4:44 a.m., Kira watched the RPG assistant drag the warhead behind a split boulder, shielding the launcher from view. They were seconds from a clean shot. The SEALs huddled behind the old BTR had no angle on the ridge. The killbox was tightening, and there was no backup. No air support. No flanking unit. Just her. She knew the ROE by heart. She'd read it 3 times the night before. Observe and report. Do not engage, unless American lives are in imminent danger. The words had been repeated by the task force commander, and again by Chief Logan, but in this moment, they were more than policy. They were permission. Her right hand slid from the radio mic to the grip tensilev.org. The scope showed a full side profile now. RPG gunner keeling. Assistant loading. PKM to the left repositioning. Kira's finger touched the trigger shoe. Her breathing already at the bottom of a cycle. 1 second to pause. Half a second to press. The rifle kicked gently into her shoulder. Suppressed, but not silent. The report echoed off the far canyon wall. Through the scope, she saw the RPG gunner collapse sideways. His chest snapped open by the play. 300 Norma round. The assistant froze, then ran. He didn't make it more than 3 steps. Second shot. Center mass. Dead before he hit the dirt. She didn't blink. Wind call held at 5 knots. Left to right. Distance to next target 920 meters. PKM. Elevated by 10 feet on a rock ledge. She adjusted holdover to 3. 1 mils. Fired. The gunner dropped. His weapon clattered down the slope, tumbling into the ravine. She lifted her head for half a breath. Checked the broader picture. More movement northeast. 2 enemy fighters advancing low. AKs up. She had them marked. They hit the edge of a shadow cast by the ridge. Kira swung her body 1 degree right. Reacquired. Exhaled slowly. Squeezed. 1 down. The second turned and bolted for a mud wall. He almost made it. The shot went through the wall. She'd already calculated that possibility. The round passed clean through the soft clay and took him in the lower back. Now the tempo had shifted. Enemy fighters ducked. Changed elevation. Panicked. Their communication was breaking down. Kira felt it before she saw it. A pattern fracturing. The ambush had lost timing. She reloaded with calm efficiency, dropped her empty 10-round mag into a dump pouch, and slid a fresh one home. Bolt forward. Safety off. She marked a new cluster of movement near a drainage ditch on her range card. It had been her lowest priority before. Now it became her highest. 4 fighters. Sprinting. Disorganized. She led them slightly. First shot struck the man in front. The others dove for cover, but she knew those rocks. Had measured them in daylight. They weren't high enough to hide behind. She fired again. And again. 3 down. 1 wounded and crawling. On the comms, a different voice came through. Neptune. 2 actual. Logan was down. Williams in command. 3 urgent surgical. Can't move without suppression. Can you cover? Kira's reply was short. Already on it. Move now. The wind was still steady. Hair grip. Dry. Hair eye. Calm. The rifle was a tool. The mission was clear. She wasn't just breaking protocol. She was rewriting the outcome. At 4:47 a.m. Kira was no longer thinking. She was executing. Her world had narrowed to the reticle and the rhythm of her breath. The battle below her wasn't chaos. It was a grid, a living map, and every movement had a solution. She worked the bolt with fluid motion, chambered a new round, acquired, fired, shifted. Again, it wasn't adrenaline. It was muscle memory, burned into her from thousands of hours behind the rifle. Every shot had purpose. Every decision was a result of training, not impulse. The Barrett MRAD kicked back cleanly as another 300 Norma Magnum round screamed downrange. 190 grains of copper-jacketed precision tore through a mud wall and into a fighter crouching behind it. She didn't wait to confirm. The silhouette folded. Her next shot was already lined up. 4 enemy combatants had taken position behind a rock outcrop northeast of the compound. From a direct angle, they were concealed. From Kira's elevation, she had a slight downward view under the overhang. She dialed down the magnification slightly, then adjusted her body angle to reduce profile. 1 breath. First shot punched through the gap and hit the closest fighter in the neck. The others flinched. 1 tried to return fire, spraying wildly uphill with an AK. He hit nothing but rocks. Kira centered on him. Second shot, just under the collarbone. Clean drop. She had already burned through her second mag. Her fingers moved without thought. Ejected the empty. Reached to her side pouch. Fresh 10-round magazine and bolt forward. Ready. She barely lifted her head. At 4:51 a.m., she spotted 2 more hostiles bounding through a dry irrigation ditch. About 400 meters out, their path curved just enough for a skip shot. She angled her rifle slightly, hit the flat face of a smooth boulder. The round ricocheted off the surface at a controlled angle. It struck the lead runner just above the hip. The second man stopped, stunned, unsure where the shot had come from. Kira didn't give him time to figure it out. A second later, he dropped beside his partner. She rotated her body left, keeping her spine flat to the ground. This let her cover the east edge of the compound. 2 fighters had slipped out the back and were trying to loop around. One had an RPK slung over his chest. The other carried spare drums. They thought they had time. They didn't. She used a sniper loophole she'd built before dawn. A narrow crack between 2 stacked rocks, just wide enough for a barrel. It gave her concealment while allowing a limited field of fire. She angled the rifle into position, slid the bipod leg forward until it locked, then adjusted for drift. First shot dropped the RPK gunner mid-stride. The second man dove flat. Mistake. The flat angle made him a silhouette. Her next round entered just under the shoulder blade. Instant kill. The enemy movement slowed. The ones who hadn't been hit were now hiding, not advancing. She watched them scatter. One tried to crawl behind a goat pen made of stacked logs. She didn't fire. Not yet. Another attempted to move through a dry wash. Staying low, she marked the path, gave it 3 seconds, waited until the helmet peeked over the lip, fired. Instant. Silent. The radio cracked again. Neptune 2. We're moving. 15 seconds to exfil point. Keep them off us. Copy. Keep moving. You're covered. Kira shifted back to her original position. Adjusted for distance. Checked wind again. She knew every rock, every blind corner, every place a fighter could try to hide. They weren't in control of the valley anymore. She was. At 6:25 a.m., the sun had begun to edge over the eastern ridgeline, casting pale gold light across the FOB. The medevac birds were gone, their rotors now just a memory on the wind. The compound was quiet except for the sound of boots, low murmurs, and the metallic clink of gear being repacked. Kira sat cross-legged beside a folding table, her Barrett MRAD broken down on a cloth in front of her. The rifle's bolt rested beside a bottle of solvent, and she worked the bore snake through the chamber with patient precision. Her sleeves were rolled up. Her face was smudged with dust. She hadn't slept in almost 24 hours. Chief Logan limped into view, his head wrapped in gauze, one eye slightly swollen. He paused a few feet away, holding his helmet loosely by the chin strap. For a long second, he didn't speak, just stood there, awkward, unsure of what to do with his hands. Kira didn't look up. Finally, his voice came low, rough from dust and pain. "I was wrong about you." She didn't respond, just kept working the snake down the barrel. He shifted his weight, cleared his throat. "That shooting, at those ranges, it's the finest I've ever seen." Kira set the rifle down gently, then looked at him, not with anger or triumph, just a quiet steadiness. "It was never about being the finest, Chief. It was about bringing you home." Her words hung in the air a moment before she went back to cleaning. Logan didn't say anything else. He nodded once, more to himself than to her, then turned and walked away. There was no handshake, no speech, no ceremony, just understanding, quiet, earned, and real. The wind picked up slightly across the ridgeline, fluttering the corner of her range card, still tucked under a rock. Kira wiped the last of the carbon from the bolt face and reassembled the rifle in silence. At 7:30 a.m., Kira stood in the admin tent, eyes on the paperwork, not the colonel seated behind the desk. The Silver Star recommendation lay open on the table, flanked by folders, reports, and casualty logs from the mission. Colonel Danner leaned back in his chair, studying her like he couldn't quite reconcile the quiet woman in front of him with the kill tally from the ridge. He cleared his throat. "The write-up is solid. You'll be up for ceremony next quarter. D.C. wants it on the books." Kira shook her head once. "No ceremony. C. Please just process it quietly." Danner blinked, surprised, but said nothing. He signed the form and slid it to his adjutant. That should have been the end of it. But stories like hair don't stay quiet forever. It started with the SEALs, not public-facing, but in after-action reports, in hallway conversations, and among team leaders across JSOC. Neptune Element had survived a full ambush with minimal casualties. The key variable wasn't gear or luck. It was a lone Overwatch asset with eyes, patience, and precision. Operators talk, and when they do, the truth spreads faster than any citation. Within a month, training liaisons at Fort Moore began receiving quiet inquiries. Command teams asked about prior female sniper graduates, not for press. For future attachments, the phrase "we need another Hansen" showed up in 2 separate email threads reviewed by the sniper school cadre. 6 weeks after the mission, SOCOM revised its internal guidance on sniper attachments for joint operations. Gender wasn't scrubbed from the language. It just stopped being a consideration. Competence spoke louder now. Kira didn't read the memos, but she heard from an old instructor who emailed to say, "Whatever you did out there, it's moving walls back here." She deployed twice more over the next 2 years. Same AO, same gear, different reception. Teams stopped brushing past her. They listened during briefings. One E7 from an ODA team handed her his route plan and said, "I trust your math more than mine." No yokis, no sarcasm, just quiet respect earned through action. In her final tour, She ran a 3-woman Overwatch cell, supporting rotating SOF teams across the eastern provinces. Her team wasn't ceremonial. They were operational. Live fire. Real missions. She spent less time proving herself and more time teaching. When she rotated stateside in the fall, no one held a banner. No news piece ran with her name. She walked off the tarmac the same way she'd walked in. Rifle case in one hand, pack on her back, dust on her boots. At the range on base, someone had stenciled a quote on the inside of the tower wall. No attribution. Just the words, "Don't tell her she can't." She smiled when she saw it, then loaded her mags, and kept shooting. At 8:40 p.m., back in the stillness of her stateside apartment, Kira sat alone at her workbench. The Barrett lay disassembled under soft lamplight. Its black finish clean but worn. Her fingers moved slowly, running a cloth down the bolt. Not to clean it, but to feel it, to remember. Her father used to say that math never cared who you were. That wind, gravity, and time treated every shooter the same. She believed him more now than ever. What separated the great from the good wasn't size, volume, or swagger. It was discipline, stillness, and listening when others didn't. Combat had stripped away a lot of things. It didn't care about how you looked or what people thought. Pride didn't protect you out there. Rank helped. But ego got people killed. What kept others breathing was the work done before the fight. The hours no one saw. The calculations made with dirt under your nails and fatigue behind your eyes. She'd been underestimated in every unit she entered. Laughed at. Passed over. Misused. Not because she lacked the skills, but because someone saw a quiet woman and thought soft. But the rifle never judged. It just asked one question: can you make the shot? Kira never needed applause. Never cared about medals or magazine spreads. What mattered was who came home. What mattered was how many folded flags she helped avoid. The battlefield didn't remember names, but it did remember who stayed calm, who showed up, who hit the mark when it counted. If there was one thing she wished more people understood, it was this: don't decide someone's worth by what you see. Watch what they do. Listen longer. Doubt slower. The greatest strength she ever carried wasn't her rifle. It was the patience to let others underestimate her and the clarity to never let it stop her. She reassembled the bolt with a quiet click, set the rifle back into its case, and closed the lid. Some stories didn't end with a flag waving or a crowd cheering. Some ended with a whisper, and a woman walking away, still ready.